Hi, my name's Breslin O'Malley, and welcome to the very first episode of the One on One, a podcast for software engineers with my co manager host, Rusty Tantric.
Hello, hello.
Today we have a special guest. His name is Billy, and we'll be talking a little bit about the current state of the industry, particularly in terms of layoffs and this evolving hiring market. But I think that we should probably introduce ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, we've spent a little time doing that. So Bresden and I used to work together at a place called Loyal Health, which I don't think it's a big deal to mention that one on here, but we're generally not trying to get people in trouble mentioning their company name. So like guests don't need to feel obligated to mention it, even if we mention a little bit about our own history. Um, we were just I was impacted by an RAF at Loyal. They had a couple of them. Bresden was not. We were really enjoying our time together. Like we had a really great connection. Like things were really cooking. And so it was a little bit heartbreaking to, not be able to work together anymore. But we ultimately, this was Preston's idea, but like it was something we had kind of vaguely talked about even while we were working together at Loyal, was doing some other kind of side project together, whether it be like a book or a podcast or something like that. And so I don't know, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see where this goes. Excited to see, how it evolves over time because we have some ideas about how it'll go, but we don't really know until we do a few of them.
Yeah, I think that's perfect intro. I think it's fun to mention too. We did get to work with Billy for a little while. Um, we've dealt with several layoffs at Loyal, and so through that revolving door, we've had to pivot and change very quickly. And one of the things that happened was Rusty and I became co managers of a very large team. And together, current Scrum methodologies weren't working. And so we kind of threw them out and created our own process. So we were having, to Rusty's point, we were having a really good time. Rusty was collecting data, and we had actually moved forward to increase developer focus time because we found out that devs were, really having to do a lot of context switching with how many meetings were thrown on the calendar, especially with a smaller workforce. And so, again, we just kind of had to experiment and say that the current agile ideas weren't working for us, and we were having a good time. And right when we were starting to see kind of the fruits of our labor and getting excited, and like Rusty, you said we were going to write a book, I kept mentioning this could be a thing. We're making waves here. The layoff happened, and we were unable to see kind of the results of that experiment that we had done. So,
Mhm.
but yep, I loved working with you, Rusty. I also loved working with you, Billy, and it's one of the reasons I am really excited you're here as our first guest.
Welcome, Billy.
Cool.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. A little bit about the one on one. My idea was to kind of just create a safe space for engineers, engineering managers, maybe product, maybe recruiters to come on here and just kind of, as in the idea that a one on one should be a safe place to vent and share your story and talk about anything you really want to talk about. That's hopefully the platform we can create here. So, Billy, this is your one on one. What do you feel like chatting about today?
I've been thinking a lot about I'm learning to program, it would seem. After not doing it for several years, I've gotten back into it and wow, a lot changes in a few years.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. I mean, I was as also someone who was part of a layoff, I've had this journey of like, okay, well, do I go back to being an individual contributor? Do I keep trying to go after a management job? And then I guess like the central, I think one of the insights we've talked about before we were on the podcast was something you learned was that now it seems like managers have a higher expectation of coding. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. The contrast from looking for a job last summer when I was laid off and looking for a job this past winter when I was laid off was incredible. Last summer it was a lot of companies very similar in style. You have your engineering manager who has a small slice they're responsible for. You want someone comfortable with the tech, comfortable with the architecture, but not necessarily hands-on keyboard. A lot of times running the day-to-day. At Mural I was de facto scrum master. Prior to that, I was in a role where I was essentially a product owner, um, but there was never really time to get like hands on the keyboard and code. What I found as I was looking this last time for a role was more and more places wanted that comfort with
Yeah.
coding, and I had some catching up to do. And that was, started to break out the leak code and the chat GPT and just start catching up on what I missed the last few years because I was looking at code reviews. I wasn't ignorant to the code, but there's a lot, as you know, there's a big difference between helping somebody else maybe clean up their code or writing some unit tests and actually getting in and building. So that's really been like my experience in this last role. I got a tech lead role. It was managing people, but also about 30-40% hands-on keyboard time. And I'm having the most fun I've had in years. Like I feel so much more like I'm in control of my career. I don't know my career. I don't know. It's just it's nice to have that like, well, you know what? If I needed to, I could just go be a software engineer because and it varies. We're scaled agile where I work. So during our PI planning, our product owner was on leave. So I was de facto product owner. So there was 3 weeks where I did not open an IDE, I did not open Git, I did not, push anything. I was just, preparing the backlog. And I enjoy that. I enjoy wearing a lot of hats. And it's been really cool in this last role to get back to my roots and add development to that. And know that, like, while I love this job and I feel more and more secure in it, you know what? If this doesn't work out, go back to the drawing board, be a software engineer. I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. Now, I mean, I guess as a former, my last role at Loyal, I was an all of us were engineering managers at Loyal. And so like my fun employment time, my last 4 months, I've part of like one of my side projects has been to learn Next.js and Prisma and like some of these other things and to kind of pick up some more code skill, in part because I feel this like maybe low level existential dread might be a way to put it. Of like, am I going to be able to get a management job? Now, I've been really close on a couple in the last 4 months, but I haven't quite gotten, like I haven't quite closed on one yet. And, as y'all know, I'm sure, like going through an interview process, there's a million things that can happen during that time. So like I don't know. Do you want to speak, Billy? Like you went through two layoffs, or was it two or three? Three
great.
total. My gosh. Like, how did you keep yourself sane during that time? How do you deal with that?
Well, actually, there's been 3 layoffs, but also a few years ago there was also a closure. In
Oh my
2019, I
goodness.
worked for a small healthcare organization that was shuttered. We found out a week ahead of time. I tell you, that's deflating, man. Like that, you go in, the GitLab's gone, everything you've spent years building. I was
Oh
there
my
for three
gosh.
years. And that experience made when I got laid off the first time last summer, I didn't know what to expect because in 2019 I was a senior software engineer in test,
Mhm.
and I got laid off. And within 3 weeks, I had 3 job offers making 10% more than what I made. I mean, 2019 was a good time to be
Yeah.
a senior IC.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I live in Pittsburgh, where healthcare is huge. Being in the healthcare domain, I mean, but then in 2023, when unfortunately Muro had a riff that impacted me, I thought it was going to be similar. It was not. It was,
Yeah.
a much harder process. And it was deflating because like much like your experience with Loyal, I was really loving my team at Mural. We were building something really great. It just the reality is that like the macroeconomic realities just caught up to Mural, and unfortunately, a lot of good people had to go. So it was both like how am I going to support the family? But also, like, I loved it there. I loved
Yeah.
the culture. I loved the work I was doing. My only regret really is that I wasn't pushier about getting into the code.
Yeah.
Um, but so how to keep myself sane? Sorry, that was a lot of.
That's okay.
It was, if you're going to be let go or laid off, early June's an okay time to do it. I got to spend some time with the family. We did a little vacation. I took my laptop on vacation and did some interviews. In the morning, I compartmentalized that time. Like, I had a couple hours set aside so I could further my job search and then, hit the pool with the kids. And I think that's really important. Like, take time for yourself and your
Yeah.
family. But every day, if I didn't do something for the job search, I felt like I did. Like, it's like, you don't sign on to work that day. You're like, I should be doing something. Like, so that was hard. I rebounded pretty quickly. Loyal had hired me within 2 months. So now the subsequent layoffs were a lot more difficult because everything just feels like everything you've done's come undone. I was loyal for 2 months. As you know, I was impacted. It really is a last in, first out situation at that point. I'm still onboarding. Like, why would you let somebody else go when you have this person who's like, the next week I was actually going to start helping. I was going to be trained to do some IC work to help my team move some stuff over the finish line. And then, so the loyal one really hit me, and again, it was just unfortunate economic situation and wrong place, wrong time. But I got caught in that loop because it happened again. Another startup, another Series A.
Yeah.
They had a great, and I thought I knew the questions to ask. Hey, what are you going to do if the next round of funding falls through? And they had great answers. And I have no doubt that every person I talked to believed it with all their heart. But as you both know, in a startup, only one thing really has to go wrong to derail
Yeah.
it. And we lost one customer. We were in transportation, and I don't want to share too much, but one customer lost one contract and it derailed the whole thing.
Oh, no.
We lost, they lost billings, we lost billings, half the company was cut. And again, well, we did without this guy for a while, and he just joined. I was there a month and a half. So
I don't,
and
oh man, I've never heard of anybody
Yeah,
having that many clustered together like that. It's
yeah.
wild.
And
it is.
people can say what they want, but like, people make assumptions when they see that. They make if they see that job history, they make assumptions about you. Like, well, if you had been that good, they would have found a way to keep you. People make those assumptions, and that was why in my next role I was like, I have to hit the ground running. And I was, when I was asked to fill in for my product owner at my current role, I had been there a month and a half. And when they asked me to fill in, they said, "Man, we're giving you a lot to do, aren't we?" And it felt really good just knowing, like, all right, I'm contributing here. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm babbling a bit
My
now.
God.
No, that's
No, no, no.
okay.
This is
No,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I
great.
actually was curious because you went in with all of these amazing interview questions. You thought you knew what to ask because you'd worked for so many startups prior. Do you have a different set of questions that you ask nowadays that might help answer any of these like weird situations you ended up in?
it's it's hard because no one's ever, like, it comes off as so negative in the interview to say, what's your backup plan? Because
Hmm.
that's what it is. Like, what's your backup plan for when venture capital is not there? What's your backup plan for when interest rates spike? What's your back? I joined Mural right around the time of, like, the Ukraine Russia war
Oh my
starting.
goodness, yeah.
So, like, the economic impact of that hadn't yet been realized, and that was really when the first shoe fell for Mural. Was, everybody knows, like, what happened economically at that point. Um, to answer your question though, Breston, I'm still figuring out what exactly
That's
what
fair.
I got to a point where it gets hard. Your startups really become more and more about your if you're risk averse, your risk tolerance, I guess. And obviously there's different stages of startups, and like, we use the term startup for, like, any tech company that's
True.
Yeah.
publicly traded. I don't really know if that's accurate.
Yeah, any tech company that's been around less than 20 years is a startup, basically, right? So,
Yep.
um,
Yeah, that is
here,
true.
I have one follow-up question too. So we know what I hear what you tell yourselves, like what, and this could be either for Breslin or Billy, like what do you tell your people when they're feeling that dread, when they know something's coming? Because people are not blind to these things, right? Like they can just sort of sense when maybe a market condition has affected the company in a negative way, or and you don't have to talk specifically to like a specific company, but like generally, what do you tell your folks?
Um, I will take this real quick to give you a break, Billy. So I've been through several layoffs. Mostly ended up as a survivor in most of them. And honestly, what I've noticed is it's better to just be transparent and level with them, and also feel that empathy and grief with them. Um, you can't dehumanize these situations. And when you start feeling that they are nervous, let them talk, ask them questions. Why are they nervous? What are the motivators for that? Fear, did they just have a baby? Did they, what's causing the fear? And I've found that you can at least alleviate some of that anxiety and stress just by giving them that safe place to talk about it and understand that that they're also human, and it's completely acceptable to be worried. Um, that's kind of the best I have is the transparency. I think everything else falls
Yeah,
flat.
Yeah, that was a perfect answer. And that's really my approach was the same. Like, yeah, that's I'm concerned too. Let's talk about it. And also making sure that like they're seen and appreciated for what they are achieving.
It's a
We
good
reached
one.
we reached a major milestone about in a previous role about 3 weeks after a second riff, and we I knew money was tight, but reached out to leadership and said, we want to keep these folks. They worked really hard. They deserve some kind of recognition. And they sent out like little like snack baskets to them. Nothing big, but enough to show them that like they were seen and that they were appreciated for like pushing to get this breach this
yeah,
hit this deadline.
I love that. I feel recently, since our most recent layoff, we've really exemplified kudos as much as possible. So we have kudos every single morning prior to stand up. There's been days I've even kind of skipped over stand up and we haven't done it, but we've done kudos, and we learn a lot about what everyone did yesterday because of those while we're all sitting there thanking each other. Um, and I feel that it's had a positive impact. It's also had a positive impact on myself too, because I go into them thinking, oh my God, they've helped me. All these people have helped me. And um, it's more conversational than, a very strict stand up.
yeah. I remember Dresden when we were running the teams together, like that was one of the first things we started doing was we started adding the kudos to the beginning of the meeting. And just generally speaking, I know to kind of answer my own question, like just looking inward, what is really one way that I coped, that I personally coped with it, looking inward at the team, looking inward at myself, and not really trying to not focus as much on all these things swirling around outside the team that are not even remotely in my control, but that
Hmm.
do affect us.
I do really appreciate when we started that, Rusty. We took stand up away completely. During that time, we just started every single meeting with kudos, and all we were doing was thanking each other, and not so heavy on what the day to day looks like for everyone,
Yeah,
because we're all dealing with grief at that point, right? We're sitting there, a lot of us don't have work. There's so much ambiguous conversation happening, and no one really knows what's happening yet, so you don't have a clear path and a clear plan. So it was
yeah,
so helpful to sit there and just remember that we're present and that we're a team and that we're here for each other. And so I really commend us for taking that step and just kind of dropping a very normal methodology that's used. But, honestly, there wasn't a lot going on when it first happened because it's a scary thing, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
so afraid of not being seen as working after these moments. And so if we just stopped asking you what you did yesterday and what you were going to do today, and instead recognized you, I think that it had a really nice support aspect to it.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I have to
No,
say
that,
about that.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I
Um,
love kudos. That's all. One,
um,
I do have a
Go ahead.
question before, if we're ready to move off this particular subject.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Going back to you needing to dig more into the code and become an engineering manager that codes 30% or some X number, what have your interviews been like as an engineering manager, and are they different than previous
Um,
interview questions?
you mean the interviews I conduct with candidates?
Or no, no, actually, that's a good question too. But more so, what are your experiences trying to interview for a job as an engineering manager now? Are you going through leak code interviews? Are you getting paired programming sessions? Like, what does that look like?
Few different experiences there. I did a couple rounds with an autonomous driving company, and they did some Python tests, not leak code, but a similar tool. And then I did get an interview with a very large company that we've all heard of and dominates our lives. And I was, I wasn't like super excited about it, but I also like wanted to just do it for the experience of interviewing. And it was, really intense, like architectural type of interview. Um, I interviewed somewhere else where I gave like an architectural presentation. I At the time, the best thing I could find to present was a DevOps slash QA project I had led. And then the role I ended up getting was a contract to hire, and I had 2 rounds of panel interviews. They asked technical questions, but they were like really focused on like culture and behavioral fit, making sure I could intelligently discuss technology because they weren't looking for someone that could come in and be an expert in any one thing. They just needed someone who, we have a Python backend, we have an Angular front end, we rely heavily on database,
Mhm.
DevOps. So they just wanted someone that kind of understood all these things. And it really was a great fit for me because having been in like a QA before, having been in DevOps, having been a software engineer, I just was really excited at the prospect of like getting to kind of dip my toes in all of it. I've been doing a lot of UI work the past month or two because that's where the need has been. But I'm looking to do some DevOps work over the next month or two. And then I'm looking to spend some time with my backend team on that just to kind of round everything out. But I really love it because like I don't have to be the expert. I just have to be able to like, you know what I mean? You come to me with an idea
Yeah.
or a problem and I help you like walk through it or discuss it. It's really great. I don't, I think that if I was interviewing for like a straight IC role, I think the challenge would be like what I don't, I wouldn't consider myself a domain expert. I really consider what do they say, jack of all trades, master of none,
Yeah.
or something like. Uh,
Generalist. Yeah.
yeah, so I really, the interview even where I'm at now got me excited because they were like, we want a well-rounded technologist who can come in, contribute, lead. Sometimes you might do nothing but write code for a week, and other times you might be stuck in planning for a week. And like I said, I love it. I like having a different day to day. That's why QA and DevOps suited me because those areas don't get boring. Um, so yeah.
I guess a follow-up I have to that is because I've been thinking about this and the always dangerous. When are there things that kind of fall off that you used to do as a manager who didn't code? Or, and fall off maybe not be the right word, but just things you choose not to do, or things that you choose to spend less time on because you're coding more now.
I am able to really rely on because I am lucky enough to work for like a larger company that does have more resources. I have project managers, business analysts, a scrum master, product owners. I
Yeah.
have people who are good like, I always in startups helped out with that stuff wherever I was, and that was fine. I wherever I'm needed, I was happy to help. But it's great. Like I felt at first maybe I was stepping on my scrum master's toes, and I would always apologize and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so happy to have you. Like I'm not trying to take, like, I'm gonna go code, and this is awesome. And yeah, it's great. We have a business analyst who is really helpful for a lot of like the documentation and helping us like go get answers from our stakeholders. It's just it's honestly those things you just get used to not having at like companies that are a bit more strapped for cash or whatever.
Yeah. I think at Loyal at one point I was the product owner. Actually, at 2 points I was the product owner. Um, let's see. I was kind of de facto Scrum Master for a while. Um, and like I don't know. I mean, everywhere is so different with how they do these things because a lot of the places I'm interviewing now, I mean, it's anecdotal, but I do notice like a little bit of a trend toward what you're talking about of like we're going to have somebody who's a dedicated Scrum Master to be the Scrum Master, and then we want our engineering managers to at least, if not code, then at least be a little closer to it than perhaps the expectation has been before.
Right. Definitely.
Have you seen that too, Rusty? Have you been going through more technical interviews than normal?
Yep. Um,
Oof.
it's so my most recent role, I didn't code much other than, Breslin, you were talking about pulling stuff out of Google. Like, I was writing some Python scripts to pull Google Calendar API data, but like this is the kind of thing I could just sort of like do when I had 2 hours here and there. It's not something that was really urgent, and it was really just for my own edification. Like I'm a data nerd, and I pull all sorts of data that I never show anybody because I'm not trying to freak people out with it. I'm not trying to beat people over the head with it. I'm just curious. And that was the same way with the free time stuff. I ended up showing that to some people because I thought they would be interested in it. But yeah, I mean, the question I guess was, is there more code in these interviews? Yeah, like I've done all sorts
Mm.
of code tests, and I'm finding that it's hard. Like it's, one day I feel like I will absolutely rock one and knock it out. And this actually happened this week. I had one where I passed under the allocated time. I had a good solution. I had what I thought was a pretty good system architecture discussion, and then boom, auto reject the next day. Um, it was tough.
Wow.
Like, it's weird to pass one and then to still not get selected, you know. Um, but I don't know. That's just the market we're in right now. And I've had some where I bomb them too, because like I don't know, live code is such a crapshoot. Like one day you'll do great at it, one day you won't. And um, at least those I understood why I got cut out. Um, but it's I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of it, even for managers.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense. Um, Billy, do you see like a change in your normal day to day? Like this goes back to your question, Rusty, but um,
Mhm.
in order to prioritize or prioritize all your tasks so that you're still coding, are you like working longer hours than normal? Like what does that look like on a day to day to have so many hats?
Sure. I'm very lucky. I have a fantastic boss. Um, I'm currently backfilling some roles, and she's made it very clear to me that I am not to overextend myself or my team in order to reach our goals. We can, push out things as needed, which, I realize that I'm very lucky in that matter, in that regard. I do think there's potential for work-life balance to get out of hand if a person doesn't have good discipline or if they have a company that is willing to take advantage of them. Like I said, thankfully, like I feel very supported. I'm like I said, some weeks I just don't get as much coding done as I want to, and other weeks I'll get more done. Sometimes I'll choose to put in some extra time in evenings or weekend, but that's more based on like I'm not satisfied with where I got that week. But if my boss sees me on Teams like after hours, she'll be like, "Get offline and go spend time with your family." So that's really great. I can't say enough positive things about that, and I hope every manager is like that because we should all have good work life balance.
That's so familiar because I had one. I'm not going to name names, but I had one really, really amazing developer who came from one of these big places that runs all our lives and was used to these 60 and 70-hour weeks. And I had to actually set an alarm for myself to sign on and tell him to sign off. So I'm glad to hear that you have that kind of support at where you're at now. That's great.
Yeah, it's I'm lucky.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. With the downsizing in our force, I am also coding. I've been putting PRs up. I had to get my developer machine set up. So it's happening with myself as well, which is probably good if I actually have to go hit that job market. So that's good to know, though. My work-life balance might not be the best yet. We haven't quite figured that out. So that's why I was curious. Cool.
Yeah.
Or actually, Rusty, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, it seems like a natural segue into something else. What were you gonna
Yeah,
say?
probably. I was going to segue into essentially with it sounds like, Billy, you've actually started um, working in a different environment, almost more enterprise like than your previous startup life. What kind of differences are you experiencing moving into a different size of
Sure.
company?
The tools are a lot more heavy-handed, Microsoft ecosystem. So that takes some getting used to. And when you join a large enterprise, there various corporate trainings to go through and stuff like that. But honestly, it hasn't been bad. Like we have the support. We needed to get Figma for our UX person. I had it in 2 days. Like having that sort of like what like having that sort of support is just amazing.
That is
So
amazing. Just have to state.
and I have worked for big enterprises before. It's been years.
Okay.
But this is a much different experience for me. It feels like this is it feels like where I'm at right now is recognized maybe to get better talent, they have to sort of like kind of adopt that startup mindset
Mhm.
because like I said, our team sort of like kind of operates as a startup. We have that kind of mindset, mentality, and honestly work ethic. Like the developers want to put in the time. I have to say like, hey, y'all, like I appreciate it, but let's call it a day.
But let's
Um,
not.
but yeah, so my experience so far, it has not been that different other than the corporate things. Like, they have more control over my laptop or, stuff like that. Yeah, I realize my experience is probably not typical. I know that could vary wildly. I certainly interviewed at some other large companies that had me a lot less excited to join.
Hmm. That makes sense. What are the most common practices that are agile and startup feeling that you get to use at your current position?
Um, all the same agile kind of stuff
Are
that I
they?
really started doing in startups. Um, the ownership mindset that I really experienced in startups where like, I feel like there's a greater sense of ownership over your work. People are willing, I have a Python dev helping out right now with Angular work. People are willing to kind of do whatever it takes to get it done. That spirit definitely exists within the team I'm on. I think a big part of it is a lot of my colleagues did come from startups. So I think, being a large company, there may be other teams where someone's experience is much different, but this is the culture we've been able to kind of carve out on our team. And obviously having a director who does things like says, get offline and go spend time with your family helps push that empathetic, like servant leadership culture.
I love
Excellent.
that. I'm so happy for you, Billy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been great, and it's been great to feel like I've had an influence on that culture as well. Do you know what I mean? Um, because that's like, I talked to both of you a lot back when we worked together, and all I really wanted to do was go somewhere where I could make some kind of difference, and also support my family.
Of course.
It's so nice when those things actually line up. I know, we all have to make a living and like it can't always be a mission, but it's so nice to come to work and to feel like you're actually making a difference in people's lives and I I hope that's what my next role is anyway.
Yeah, yeah. and you deserve it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, for those that like don't know, I know y'all mentioned it at the beginning. I worked with President and Rusty for 2 months, but they made a huge impact on me. So I really appreciate. Like, it does say something about like where we worked that like I keep in touch with a lot of people from there.
Yeah.
Um, I'm currently talking to someone else's friend from Loyo about a role on my team. I love that. I love same with like Mural, same with other places I've been. But yeah, it was a special place. It was a bummer to obviously to see that things haven't
Yeah.
worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that 100%. I mean, I still miss my team terribly. Like, I miss all the people that I worked with there, both the people who are still there, I mean, and the people who aren't, which is most of them at this point. But um, it was a special place, and a lot of special people there.
Yeah, I do think throughout this industry for me, I've been here, working as a software engineer for 10 years. And in the end, companies come and go, but those connections that you make, they keep going.
Yeah,
My best friends today are from my very first company straight out of college. And we just spent a weekend in Salt Lake City at a festival together. Like,
awesome.
Awesome.
there is something amazing. I want to blame software engineering industry. It attracts a lot of amazing people. There's a lot of empathy in this field. I feel like we've been allowed to take a more human approach to the corporate grind, even though we're stuck in it. Obviously, we're affected by those macroeconomics and the grind that a company itself has to go through. But in the end, I have you two are an amazing example. As long as you stay in connection with each other, we can keep doing us. We can do what we want to
Yeah.
do. Let's make a project. Let's do a podcast. Let's blog. Let's play video games. There's something about the people in this industry that seems um, to hold very, very true.
Yeah, that well said. Very well said.
Yeah. So that's a very positive note on the current state of the industry, at least.
And I bet we all have like just so many groups. Like I have a group with y'all. I have a group with mural folks. I have a group with folks I worked with from 2016 to 29. Like, and I still like I got someone from that group interested in a role I'm hiring for. Like it's I love that. Like, so yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Before Loyal, because Loyal has a pretty active alumni group, and I know we're all in that. And um, like WebMD had a really active alumni group because, WebMD was one of those places where everybody felt really passionate about the mission, but it also was kind of a grind too. And so there was a little bit of a kind of trauma bonding aspect to it,
Yeah.
where I don't know, like I still talk to so many of those people. Even God, it's been over 10 years since I left WebMD, but I still talk to a lot of those people.
It's awesome.
I love
Yep.
that. I just love that so much. So we have a bunch of guests to come onto this podcast, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. 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 Well, all
That's
right.
awesome.
So, is there anything else we want to cover before we wrap up here? Billy, do you have anything else on your mind?
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
What has your experience been as far as the incidence of available remote jobs compared to maybe a few years ago? Because
Yeah,
mine was they were diminishing quickly.
yeah, yeah. I keep a spreadsheet of all my applications. I'm up to about 115 now. Um, and I actually put a post today on LinkedIn about it, where I put a screenshot from my spreadsheet, which is basically TLDR that the remote jobs, the response rate is very low on them. I think I've gotten out of 115 applications, I've gotten through to 8 interviews, two of which are still in process. So I'm, fingers crossed about that, hopeful about that. But, and maybe two of them were remote. two or three of them were remote, and the the response rates, the recruiter screen rates, all of it is just way lower with the remote jobs than it is with the hybrid jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least my anecdotal experience, which seems to echo most other people's experience, is that yeah, those remote jobs are going fast.
Yeah. Yeah. That
I
was
mean, it makes
my
sense.
experience.
After COVID, I made a move based on the fact that remote was so readily available and went to a city that doesn't really have a tech scene now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it is worrisome.
Yeah. I took a job based on it being remote. And they were kind of pushing a return to office, which was one of the reasons I eventually left that role. Was it was like an hour and 15 commute each way,
Mm,
and like
God,
I had literally only applied to the company because it was advertised as a remote role.
that's
yeah.
it's really
I'm at
sad.
least fortunate to be in Atlanta where there's more stuff than other places, but even so, I mean, that is where I'm getting traction in my applications is with these hybrid roles, and I would, I mean, I would prefer a remote role, but like, what do you do if the job is hybrid? Then I guess we're going to the office again.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. A lot of my roles were in Pittsburgh. That I was in, like autonomous driving role I was looking at was in Pittsburgh. There was a like an industrial control role or something like,
yeah,
uh, but yeah, I got so lucky to like, honestly to get the remote role.
yeah. Bresden, do you have anything else on your mind?
No, I think this was great. It actually, I'm actually really excited because it does sound, Billy, you've been through a lot, and you love your new role, you love your new company. That's an incredibly positive message that I'm excited for, because I will say that that existential dread is hitting everyone,
Yeah,
myself included. I've been looking at going back to college to change my career because I'm so worried about not being able to land a job because the remote roles are gone, because I left, actual engineering and went into management, and I don't have a lot of confidence in that area in that same way anymore. So hearing your positive story is actually really helpful, to know that it might just be a grind,
yeah.
but it's out there still.
And I think that's really important to keep in mind is it's going to change. Like everything's going to change,
Yeah,
but there's what the jobs look like might change, but there's still going to be roles out there, especially for like good experienced people. They're going to need good leaders who are empathetic. So I really think it's amazing. Like in the past year, like it's just been so like up and down. So I would just say like, you know, stick with it. I know it's cliche, but like, what is it if you don't like the weather in New England? Wait 20 minutes. Like, this is gonna, the tough times are gonna pass, and the good, just but remember too when the bubbles hit. Remember when the bubbles
Yeah,
hit. Save because the bubbles don't last either,
yeah,
and we always forget that. We all like, and that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah.
If you want
That
to
that is.
bubbles and
that AI bubble that's blowing up right now. Yeah,
yeah,
that one's
Yeah,
gonna
there.
pop
That's
hard.
a that one. It's already close.
Yeah,
I truly believe that. Yeah, no, that's an entire another segment for sure.
whole other
Um,
podcast.
God, yeah, definitely worth mentioning and talking about. But oh my gosh,
Yes, yes,
um,
100%.
yeah, yeah, no, I think that that's an amazing message, Billy, and I really appreciate it. Um, and if one day we do have listeners, and this is a real podcast that really seems to feel, like it has some traction, I really think that that's a message that a lot of us need to hear right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. And I really appreciate you coming on here.
definitely.
Yeah. I'm really excited. It was also so good to see you again.
Yeah, it was great to see both of you
Yeah,
as well.
so great to see you, Billy.
Yeah, thanks for
Mhm.
thinking of me for this. It was flattering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
100%.
geez. No, you got stuff to talk about.
This is really just an excuse so we can talk to everyone again.
It
Awesome.
is. It is.
So we'll
Absolutely.
just ask you to come back soon.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And let's see. There was one thing I have to throw out there, which is just a little
Oh yeah.
disclaimer. Views expressed in this podcast, they do not belong to any of the companies that those of us who have jobs are working for. They belong only to us. And, I'm not trying to speak for Loyal. Breslin's not trying to speak for Loyal. Of course, I don't work there anymore, but that was my most recent one. Billy's not trying to speak for his company. Just want to make sure we get that disclaimer out there. And otherwise, let's see. Thanks to anybody who's listening out there. Where we're going to post these is at shows.acast.com/the one-on-one, number one, ON number one. That's where these are ultimately going to end up. So I don't know. Thank you so much for coming on, Billy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
All
loved
right.
it. Thanks, Billy.
Thank you.